Mine is personal. I was just gonna say my best friend in the whole wide world is moving closer. So
Oh, that's super awesome. Like closer.
like closer, like 15 minutes away. So
Oh, look, as somebody who values relationships probably more than anything else in this world, that's freaking cool. Congratulations. That's really, really neat. I love it. Okay, well, look, we are going to get into it. And so I'm going to share my screen here. And if you guys look, we're a smaller group. If y'all have questions, anything, like, don't be afraid to ask. And if you raise your hand, I might not see it when I'm in screen share. So just know that I'm not ignoring you. And you can just speak right up because we're friends now. We're cool. All right. So can you see a slideshow? That's super exciting. We're off to a great start. This is great. All right. So if you didn't know what the class was, it is 5 strategies to double your business and do it in less time. I don't know about you. Like, are any of you like super into being just like workaholics? Do y'all want to work all the time? Oh, I saw one. Yes. Okay. So we'll talk later. I'm gonna help save you. Um, I I don't I don't want to work all the time. I want to work the amount the lowest amount needed to get the greatest return. I don't feel bad about saying it out loud. And so everything we're going to talk about today is like, look, we're not going to spend 45 minutes together and get you completely ready to take over the world. And yet the idea is that at least we get you going in the right direction. And I am all about efficiency. All right. So we're going to do these things in less time. Now let's see when I change slides. Did the slide change for you too? Because sometimes Zoom is fascinating. Okay, it's not being fascinating today. That's fantastic. All right, so we're going to start off in what might feel like a weird way. Don't go anywhere. Just stick with me. It's going to be okay. I'm going to read you a poem. I know that's what you came here for today. You expected that I'd read you a poem. So, and I have a lot of it memorized, and yet I don't want to jack up somebody's words. So I'm going to kind of read if you see my eyes go down. Um, Said the little red rooster, believe me, things are tough. Seems the worms are getting scarcer and I cannot find enough. What's become of all those fat ones? It's a mystery to me. There were thousands through that rainy spell, but now where could they be? But the old black hen who heard him didn't grumble nor complain. She had lived through lots of dry spells, and she had lived through floods of rain. She picked a new and undug spot. The ground was hard and firm. I must go to the worms, she said. The worms won't come to me. One of you, by the way, this is not the poem. One of you has a little bit of background noise. You may want to mute. I'm not sure who it is. The words won't come to me. The rooster vainly spent his day through habit by the ways, where fat brown worms had passed in squads back in the rainy days. And when nightfall found him supperless, he growled in accents rough. I'm hungry as a fowl can be. Conditions sure are tough. But the old black hen hopped to her perch and dropped her eyes to sleep, and murmured in a drowsy tone, young man, hear this and weep. I'm full of worms and happy, for I've eaten like a pig. The worms were there as always, but boy, I had to dig. Now, again, I told you I was going to be a little weird and start off with the poem. Why did I just share that with you, though? There's no right or wrong. I mean, you might be closer to right than the other, and yet, like, why did I just share that with you? What's my point? This is where you guys talk. You hit the little unmute button.
We got to dig. We got to go out and find our worm.
Well, yeah, 100%. I mean, that is the shortest, most simple answer. Anybody have like a plus on that or anything different they felt?
I've heard a lot of agents just in this time kind of with the same like mantra, like, oh, it's just a really tough market, it's really hard. And, and while yes, I mean, I've been in real estate since now like 2019. So yeah, like there was a crazy time. I've not seen a normal market in all
There's no such thing as a normal market.
Right. So I think it's like a mindset thing too, is what I was trying to say. Like it's easy to jump on the bandwagon and complain. It's more difficult to be the outsider and be like, well, let's go find the worm,
Yeah, you're totally right. So both of you were right. So there's a couple directions with what you just said, though. And it's that, first of all, the people who are convinced this is a hard market and they can't succeed in it, they're right. They're right. That's the problem. As long as that's what they're convinced of, they'll be right. Now, the funny thing is, the people who are convinced that this is actually a market of great opportunity and that they have everything they need to be successful, they're right too. And so we've really got to be careful of what we give power to. The other thing is, if I could just be super frank with my new friends here, it's not 2021 anymore. Did y'all know that? It's no longer 2021. It's 2024. The market of today is what it is. Like, and I know a few of you were on my other class, so I don't want to get super repetitive. Like, the short answer is we got to stop living in the past. If you don't like the market, either shift your actions in order to succeed anyways, or please, for the love of all things holy, go get another job before you broke. And yet my hope for you is that you'll go do something different. There's plenty of business for everyone who wants to succeed in this business, period. Even right now, when we have way too many real estate agents and not enough houses. It's okay, because a lot of people aren't going to do anything. They're going to continue to complain. They're going to continue to go do the same thing that it worked so well in 2020. When people were falling out of the sky to buy and sell houses, gosh, it worked really well. I don't know why this isn't working right now. We've got to get out of our head. We've got to stop believing that there's only one way to succeed, and we got to get busy. We got to get busy. So, all right, poem time over. You're welcome. We're going to go on to something different here, and we're going to jump into the actual strategies. So look, when I said it was 5 strategies to double your business, I meant 5 actual strategies. So this should be super simple. And I'm going to go through some of them, and then we'll have a conversation, and then we'll deep dive a little bit into some really important stuff as far as people who are looking to grow their business. And yet the number 1 strategy is to start by knowing your outcome. Now, don't click off Zoom because you're thinking that was the most obvious thing I've ever heard. Why did I come here today? Because we don't do it. We don't do it. We jump into action. We get our license. We get up in the day and we're like, I guess I'll go do something. And we don't start with purpose. And it doesn't really matter how talented you are, how excited you are. If you don't have any purpose behind it, you're just a spinning top. Right. So you've got to start by knowing your outcome. And I know that this next thing, know your big why. I know that can feel really elusive sometimes. And I'm going to give you a little bit of help if you struggle with that. At the end of the day, though, if you don't have a reason to do what you're doing, you won't do it. Or if you do it, you're not going to do it very well. All of you at some point were children, right? None of you were born adults. I don't know if that was a thing in Texas. I know everything's bigger in Texas. Maybe y'all were born adults. I didn't think so. So you were all children at some point, right? And your parents or your parent would tell you to clean your room. And maybe you did, maybe you didn't. And if you did, you probably moved real slow. In fact, you probably slowly made it messier while you were cleaning it, right? And then maybe, depending on your parents' style or level of insanity that day, I have 6 kids. Some days are just insane, right? They came back and said, look, I need you to clean your room in the next 10 minutes. And if you get it done in 10 minutes, I'm going to take you to ice cream. Now, some of y'all, if you were at the right age, you got your butts into gear and you got it cleaned in 10 minutes when you were hours into something getting nothing done. Am I right? Mm-hmm. Because there was a purpose. Now, at this stage in our lives, I think most of us need more than an ice cream cone to drive us. And yet, what is your big why? Why did you do this? Why did you go and leave the security of a normal job to come into this industry? What is the reason? And I'll tell you a couple things when it comes to big why. In big why and purpose, it's the same thing, FYI. First of all, just because you choose or decide what your big why is doesn't mean it's forever. It's going to change and it's going to evolve. You don't need to worry that it's going to go on your tombstone one day. Like, some days we just got to pick a direction and decide what our purpose is, right? The other thing is, as I just shared with you, I've got 6 kids, so that would qualify me as a parent, I believe. And I'm going to take a wild guess that some of the other folks on this screen and who will watch this recording have kids. Some people, their big why is truly their children and or their family. And I think that's a beautiful thing if that's the truth. If your big why, if your purpose is something different, something bigger, something in addition to your family, can I please just give you the validation, if no one else ever has, that that's okay? That doesn't make you a bad parent, anything like that. And if anybody on here ever struggle with what their big why, what their purpose is? Okay, that's what I thought. Okay, So I'll tell you something that you can do, and this is not perfect, and yet it gets you kind of pointed in the right direction, right? You could sit down and you could come up with, and you might want to write this down so you could do it later. You know, if you came up with the top three things, because we don't want to overcomplicate things, the top three things that you love to do. And I want you to understand that while this will drive your business, none of these things have to be business related. Okay. Like it can be personal, whatever. The top three things that you love to do. And then you jump down and you'd come up with the top three things that you enjoy. Like, what is it that you're passionate about? Sorry, flip it back. I flipped it well, it doesn't matter. You could do it this way too. The three things you love to do. And then the other thing that you would write down are the three things that you are passionate about. Business, personal, whatever. What are the top three? So 3 things you're passionate about, 3 things that you love to do. And if you looked at that list, now the challenge here is that I'm just going to take a wild guess because I feel like every group I'm with, this is also an Overthinkers Anonymous meeting. I'm going to take a wild guess just because like that's who we are as human beings. If you could just, and the little button is right back here behind your right ear, by the way, you just turn off the overthinking for a couple minutes. And if you just looked at the 6 things that you wrote down and kind of let your pen start moving, I think you'd come up with a purpose pretty quickly. Now, it may not be perfect and it may evolve over time. And yet, you know, Gary Keller tells us in the One Thing book that sometimes we've just got to pick a direction, march down the path, and see how we feel about things. And if we find that the purpose we thought we had wasn't enough to drive us, well, then we go back to the drawing board. And yet most people will never even take that step. They'll just sit and wonder until it's too late to even do anything with your purpose. So I can't emphasize enough, the foundation is so important, and your foundation for being highly successful versus being like, hey, I make some money in real estate, it really is having a clear definition of what your big why is. Also within that, knowing your outcome is what's your goal? Now we're going to bring it back to business, or really any goal that you have in your world, right? What is your goal? That needs to be clear. It needs to be written down. This is not a business planning course. And yet, even if all your business plan is that you wrote down somewhere how much money you want to make, how many homes you're going to sell to do it, and all that good stuff, even that is better than having it live up here, right? So what is it that you're looking to do? And then, I don't know about you, have any of you ever set, like, maybe it was this year, maybe it was last year, maybe it was sometime in the past, you were making a certain amount of money and you set a goal to make more money the following year, and you ended up basically making the same amount of money that you had made the year prior? Anybody ever fall into that trap? Maybe, yeah, I'm seeing a couple yeses. So that's because, look, your brain only knows what you tell it. And you can tell your brain, like, let's say that you made, let's just use whatever number. Let's say you made 200 grand last year, and you've decided that this year you would like to earn $250,000. Great, that's not even doubling it. It's okay though, let's just go with it. $250,000. That means nothing to your brain. That means nothing to your reticular activating system, your RAS, if you've ever heard that term. It means nothing. So if $200,000 is what you live off of, then you're just going to go make $200,000 again. You've got to have a destination for every dollar that you decide to earn. Like, what are you going to use it for? Because I think there's a very, very teeny tiny faction of people who actually care about money. What we care about are the things that we can do with the money, right? So we've got to create a destination for every dollar. Like, you have to know exactly if you're going to make 200, 250, 300, a million, 60,000, doesn't really matter to me. Where is every dollar going? And if we're going to build a big business, like if we're going to double our business and we'll level up our life, we've got to stop thinking in such small terms too, right? Like, okay, so the easiest thing to start doing when you're figuring out where all your dollars are going to go is the easiest thing is to just go ahead and, okay, well, I owe this to this, and my car costs this much, my house costs this much. And all of a sudden, all you're really doing is listing off bills, which is fine. We got to pay those. What else are you going to do? Because the challenge that I find with many, many real estate agents, not all, and yet many, is that real estate tends to be most people's second or more career. And we're coming out of a fixed income mindset where we don't think in terms of extra. And yet we want to make the extra money. So we've got to give some thought to what are we going to spend our money on? And you would be amazed when you know what your why is, and you know the reason you're making every dollar that you earn, you'll show up at such a higher level that alone helps you increase your business, right? And then you got to focus on these things every day. Raise your hand or your digital hand if you've had a tough day in the last couple weeks in real estate. No, oh, everybody's easy breezy. Oh, that's fantastic. I just don't believe you. That's the only thing. Oh, somebody put something in the chat box, and my chat box is not coming up. So if you have a question, please just unmute and ask, or tell me that you're over it, whatever it was. My chat box is not coming up for some reason. I'm sure it's in some other window. So why do I ask about a tough day in real estate? I ask about a tough day in real estate because they're going to happen. They're going to continue to happen. And my friends, if we do not have a focus on why we do what we do and why we're looking to earn more money, we're going to spend way too many mornings in bed. We're going to spend way too long binging on Netflix. We're not going to do, you're in an industry where you no longer have a boss, which is super fun and super scary at the same time, in my experience. So we've got to make sure that we're focused on where are we going? Why are we going there every single day? It makes it so much easier to get up, get out of bed, and get done what we need to get done. So that's strategy number one. Know your outcome and have a very, very consistent and constant relationship with it. All right. The second strategy, and it's a real simple one, is to identify your one thing. And, you know, friends, it's just lead generation. I know you want it to be something else. I'm 18 years into this business. I want it to be something else. And I also understand after 18 years, it's finally through my thick skull that that's the one thing. Period. Now, are there other things you're going to do? Of course. And yet, you want to know why a lot of real estate agents never see the success and the wealth that they got that little license for? It's because they spent so much time, and by they, I also mean you, sorry, don't be mad at me, on things that make us no money, on things that don't even matter. We've got to stop. We got to flip the way we look at that. What gets you paid as a real estate agent, and frankly, like we have your team leader on, what gets her paid is lead generation. That's what gets her paid. And what gets you guys paid, the rest of you, is lead generation and of course, lead follow-up. To me, they're under the same umbrella. Anytime you spend doing something else, it's not money-making, period. Now, I'm not saying that you're literally going to spend every waking hour lead generating. I understand that once you do that at a high level, you'll have business to service and all of that. And yet we have got to start thinking, what can I leverage? And it starts with little things. It moves to bigger things. And here's what I'll share with you. I have learned over the years that when I say leverage, usually half or better of the people that I'm speaking with get scared because all they think of, because we come out of different mindsets from other careers, is, oh, I got to spend money to leverage. I got to spend money to leverage. I don't have money to spend. I got to, like, leverage is anything that buys you your time back. And leverage does not always cost money. Now, some leverage does cost money. And yet at the end of the day, when you guys show up like a beast and you lead generate every day, like your career depended on it, since it does, I promise any of the financial leverage you'll be able to afford without a problem. And yet we tend as human beings, like we all do it, like I'm saying we, not you, we tend to focus on the problem rather than focusing on the plan. If we showed up like we were supposed to and lead generated like mad, we could do any type of leverage that we want. And I'll tell you something, I will share with you, I am naturally, when I don't pay attention and I just let myself be me, I'm very skeptical. And so I totally fought leverage for the first decade that I was in this business, and it sucked because it meant that I worked all the time and I also didn't achieve at as high of a level as I'd like to. And when I finally first embraced leverage, it was the goofiest little thing. It was, I had 2 dogs at home and they were like the little pocketbook dogs. So like those bladders don't last very long. If you have little dogs, you know that. And I was single at the time, living alone. So every day I needed to come home because I work out of an office. Because if you really are efficient at home, I think you're amazing and I'll high five you later. I'm not. I need to get out of the house. So I work out of an office. I'd have to come home every day, and between the drive and taking them out, it was like an hour of my day. So finally, I hired a dog walker, which at the time made me feel gross because I was like, that's the bougiest, stupidest thing that I've like, this is so silly. And I'd pay them 20 bucks a day to come take my dogs out. My productivity went through the roof when I did that. My stress level came down. I started eating lunches again. Like it was really, really amazing. And it started to change the way that I looked at leverage. And now I really and truly have gotten to a point where if it's not something that I enjoy doing or have to do myself in order to succeed, I'm not doing it. You know, I have multiple businesses that I run, and I shared with you I have 6 children. I work 40 hours a week. I refuse to give my life up in order to earn money, and I do that because of leverage. So, and this is something, this is one of those things, like I would totally go off the rails and we'd be here way more than 45 minutes. Just know this. If you choose to take the bold that I'm giving, or if you reach out outside of bold, either way, I will go down the leverage rabbit hole as much as you like. So please know you can reach out to me anytime. I'm such a believer in us buying our time back because it is the most precious commodity and we can't get it back. You can go broke and get all your money back and then some. You're never going to get your time back. All right. So we've got to get focused on lead gen and we've got to leverage everything else out. All right. Then we got to get into massive action. Big pitfall for real estate agents that I spent a large part of my career doing the same thing. So like, again, no judgment. We're doing our job, we're doing our lead generation, and we get a buyer, a seller, or at least we think we get a buyer or seller. And then we hitch our wagon to that person and they become our sole focus. We get one deal under contract. Now, our goal is to close 60 houses this year, which would require more than one under contract at any given time. Yet we get that one contract and then we latch onto it and we obsess over it, right? We sit there and wait all day because we know today's the day we're going to hear about the appraisal. So I can't schedule any appointments. I've got to be available the minute I hear. We have to stop that. We have to stop living so small. So we got to get into massive action. We've got to create a pipeline that's so big, that has so many awesome leads in it, that it would be impossible for us not to hit our financial goals or goals otherwise. Guys, it's the only way to do it. Especially, I look at the industry today and technology is such a big help and it's also a hindrance. People have so much access to information. They have so much access to the bazillion other agents. Like we can't just assume that everybody that seems to like us is going to turn into a paycheck. If it were that easy, everyone would have a real estate license and we'd all be millionaires. And it doesn't work that way. So we've got to look, one of the biggest lessons I learned early, I mean, I learned it. I don't know how well I paid attention to it until years later. And yet early in my career, when I had a mentor and I joined a team for the first couple of years, that team leader, she told me, she was like, look, if you want to close 4 deals a month, you better have 7 pending at any given time because people flake and not everything closes and loans don't get approved and buyers back out. And that's the idea here. If you lead generate at a high enough level and you stop thinking that people need you 24/7 because they don't, you'll have so much potential business that you don't need to worry if somebody change their mind about working with you or buying altogether. You don't need to worry if you meet somebody and find out they're horrible to deal with. You can tell them no. You only get to do that when your pipeline is huge. And then you've got to take that pipeline, and some of this will be automated and some of it will not be, and that's okay. And yet you've got to communicate with them like mad. We think that we over communicate. Like how often, in fact, you don't even need to nod because I know enough to know, right? We don't reach out to so-and-so because we think we're going to bother them, right? And here was the big mental shift that I had to make. I had to realize how crazy it was that I was so worried about what clients and potential clients may have thought about me that I stopped worrying about what myself and my family and the people who depend on me to earn a living think about me. Right? Over communication is not a thing unless you're communicating with somebody who isn't your person. And I'll tell you, think about it. How often do you get an email from Amazon? You're not mad that they're communicating. You're still ordering from them. We had a couple months ago, 3 months ago, whenever it was, we had Thanksgiving. And the day after Thanksgiving, there were probably companies that texted you 3, 4, 5 times just on Black Friday. Now, I can't guarantee that you bought anything from those ads, and I bet you didn't unsubscribe because you liked that company. You knew you'd do business with that company at a later date, so it's cool. We have to stop believing that we can over communicate. It's not a thing. We get mad because somebody unsubscribes. 999 people want to still hear from you, and one person unsubscribes, and we're like, oh gosh, I gotta pull back. We've got to make that mental shift, and we have got to communicate with our people at such a high level that they could never possibly use somebody else or transact in real estate without us knowing about it. All right. The fourth strategy, I'm going to get through these 5 and then we'll take some questions and then we'll round it out with a few things after this. Okay. Know where you are at all times. So I'll tell you, the first time we sent the shuttle to the moon, right? The first time we went to the moon as the United States, the shuttle was off track 97% of the time. You can look it up. That's real. 97% of the time. And yet we still made it there. And that was because they had a team of people tracking every last itty bitty move, and they could make adjustments continuously. We are not great as salespeople and entrepreneurs at doing that. And we can be. We can be. All right. So here's the idea. You set a goal. A lot of you probably did goal setting in October or November. And if you didn't, don't feel bad. That's just when most people do it. And I know, because I coach for a living, that most agents aren't even going to look at the goals that they set again until the next October or November, when they look and they go, oh crap, I'm way off. We're not ill-equipped to hit our goals. The market's not going to stop us. None of that. We don't have a relationship with them. We don't monitor our numbers. And trust me, knowing your numbers is so absolutely boring and unsexy. I'm not going to lie to you. And when you know your numbers, when you know how many homes you need to sell, and you know how many are listings, and you know how many are buyers, and you know what your conversion rate is on listing appointments and buyers appointments, and you know what your conversion rate is from leads to setting an appointment, and you know how many people you need to speak to in order to secure a lead, your life becomes so simple. And then if you monitor your results and you're ever off track, all you have to do is a little bit of simple reverse engineering to figure out what changed. You know, sometimes you might be off on your goal purely because of the market, not because the market's stopping you, because you're listing heavy and days on market changed. Well, if we're not paying attention to that, then we can't make the proper adjustments. So we've got to know where we are at every given time, and just make adjustments as we go. If we just monitored ourselves on a continual basis, we'd be goal crushers. You'd never need bold again in your market center. And it takes a lot of practice to get into the habit. And we've got to get really comfortable with being uncomfortable, because a lot of us are going to be behind on our goals and nobody wants to see that. And yet the only thing more painful is not hitting the goal. So we've got to look at that switch cost and be okay feeling uncomfortable, knowing that, hey, maybe we didn't start off the year that strong. And yet if I do this, this, and that, I can get back on track in the next 30 days. Like, it's okay. All right. And then the 5th strategy is just get obsessed with your goals. And I think that word has a negative connotation. And the reality is that all of us are obsessing over something. Some of you are obsessing over stuff right now. In fact, and man, okay, I have a smile real big while I say it, because I'm either going to earn your trust or you're going to be annoyed with me. I'm smile real big. Okay, so some of you that maybe are off camera, I don't know what you're doing. I love you. There's no judgment. It's cool. And yet you might be obsessing over something right now, which is why you're off camera. Now I say it with love. Don't sign off. I'll cry. Don't do it. All right. My point is, we're all obsessive. It's part of who we are and how we're wired as human beings. So let's obsess over things that are good to obsess over. You know, I have people that come in late for a bold class, and it's all day long. They're talking about just how bad that traffic was. Well, how the heck did that obsession serve you today? Right? So get obsessed with your goals. You know, here's what I find. The more connected and or obsessed that I am with my goals, I hit them so much quicker. You know, I'm teaching a class tomorrow locally at a market center about wealth building. And I am like, my goal is here. I'm here on my journey for wealth. And yet just 2 years ago, I was here. Like my current, and as you get to know me, you'll know it. Like my number one obsession right now is creating wealth for myself and my family. We had our kids later in life, and I don't want to have to work full time for their entire childhood. My goal is to be in a place where I can work when I want to while they're still at home, and I can make the most impact on them and create the most memories. And so I'm obsessed with wealth building, and it has brought me tremendous results. And in fact, part of what I'm doing this year, to be transparent with my friends, is I'm getting a little bit more obsessed with my real estate business again, because my real estate business has suffered because of my wealth building. And I do believe there's room for both. And yet either way, what I can tell you is that obsession works. We just need to be careful where we point that obsession. And if you were in our class that we did on Friday, I talked about the idea of affirmations and how so many people are like, nah, affirmations don't work. And my favorite thing to do, because I am a little bit of a pot stirrer, is point out that when you say an affirmation doesn't work, that's an affirmation. Like, we all use them. We just have to get better at using them for the good. And so it's the same thing with obsession. So I want to take a moment and I want to ask if there are any questions, any ahas. And then after that, I'm going to move into a couple of more things, and that we'll have you out of here on time. So any questions or ahas on any of these strategies? And you can just unmute and talk. You don't need to raise your hand.
Hey, Hudson, so
Super
my
exciting.
question, I guess,
Yeah.
around the strategy 3, right? So I know you talk about how
Yeah.
communication is very important, and so through my career, I've built some uh relationships with like senior leadership, and me contacting them like right now, like if I wanted to contact right now, probably wouldn't be the best time because they're so busy during the week, right? So how do I get over that hump? Because I think I can't just come on the weekend because they're trying to get away from the business on the weekends, or they're trying to enjoy their time. So now I'm going to interrupt maybe their family time, or where they kind of take a back step. So I guess, how do I break that barrier?
It's a great question. And I'm going to go in two directions with it. Okay. The first direction is, one of the biggest lessons we can learn, and especially in an industry like ours, is we have to stop being tied to the outcome. And I say that in that, here's the way I see it. You call them during business hours. It's their choice if they answer or not. And yet it's far better than not calling them at all. Because even if they don't call you back, you're now top of mind again. They saw your name, they heard your words, or they saw the text you sent when they didn't, whatever it is. Like, you created, top of mind awareness. And that is all we want to do. We just need to stay in front of people. Like, you could beat out the most successful realtors as a newer realtor if you just did a better job of staying in touch with the people that know you, like you, trust you. And so just be careful. Like, we don't care if they answer. We don't care if they have we do, and yet we can't lead with that. All we know is that I'm in a communication business, so I'm going to communicate. And I can't control the other side. I can control my side. So I would say stop worrying about it. Now, if you're in a transaction with somebody and they've told you afternoons are best, that's different, just so we're clear. And yet, if we're talking about just lead generation and lead follow-up, don't be worried about whether they're going to answer or whether they're not going to answer. Just make the call, send the text, send the email, whatever it is. And now the other thing is and I say this, and I appreciate you speaking up. You've been speaking up the whole time, which I think is great. That tells me you're going to be successful. Everybody falls into this trap. The most experienced agent on here has the same thoughts that you have. And here's what what I've had to learn, and therefore I like to help other people learn it because I want people to learn from my mistakes. That's judgment. Like when we decide that they wouldn't want to hear from us during the day because they're too busy, or they wouldn't want to hear from us on the weekend because they're with their family. Now, it doesn't mean that we're wrong. I mean, sometimes we make judgments and we're right. And yet at the end of the day, it's judgment. Now, I know that's not how you intended. It's not conscious in any way. And yet if we're deciding for somebody else how they feel about us or how they feel about hearing from us, that's judgment, because really that was their decision to make. So my best advice to you is to stay out of judgment, even unconscious, because again, I'm not accusing you of like judging somebody, right? It's a different type of judgment. And just when you have the time, make the call. And again, same deal, like people say, oh, I don't want to call people in the morning. Well, I don't care. First of all, saying you're not a morning person is an affirmation, not a reality, FYI. This is not to you, this is to the whole group, kind of piggybacking, right? Like, you are most effective in the morning. There are too many Ivy League studies proving it. Like, we got to stop arguing with this. So the best time to lead, now I'm not saying you can't also lead gen and lead follow up in the afternoon or switch it up. Do whatever you want to do as long as you're doing it. And we're most effective in the morning, and yet we'll have that little voice that says, oh, it's too early to call so-and-so. Well, that's up to them. If they're that much of a night owl and you think they're not up early, then they should be smart enough to turn their phone on Do Not Disturb. Like, we've got to stop adjusting for people. We have a plan, we're sticking to the plan. Along the way, might we lose somebody here and there? No big deal, as long as we're gaining the majority, and that's what you'll do when you communicate at a high level. So I appreciate that question, it was great. All right, so
Thank you.
let me go. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so let me get through the little bit that we have left. That's not what I wanted. There we go. All right, and then we'll allow time for questions at the end as well. Okay, so if we're going to do all of this, I mean, all of it's important, and yet what came first, the chicken or the egg? Here's the thing that I want to make sure you leave here understanding is the importance of follow-up. Because another big pitfall that I see, and I'm not talking about new agents, I see this in highly experienced agents. We talk to somebody, we're working hard, and we talk to Joe, and Joe's like, yeah, 6 months or so, I'm probably going to sell the house. Okay, well, I'll call you in 6 months. Like, we're looking for the immediate because we're such an instant gratification society, which is not your fault. The world's done it to us, right? It's cool. And we're so instant gratification. We got to learn that that's amazing. And that now we're going to be on a tight follow-up plan with Joe because he has 6 months to have somebody else get under his nose and get the business. And so we've got to follow up. And I'll tell you what, it's important with a database-driven business. And then if you're doing anything outside of your database, it's even more important. If you've ever worked expired listings or for sale by owners, it is absolutely the most aggressive follow-up that's going to win 90-something% of the time. So we've got to follow up. And so I want to show you this. This is the decision continuum if you've never seen this before. Here, let me give you like an easy real world example that all of you could probably relate to. All of you at some point in your life have walked into a department store, and especially if it's the last few years, like, nobody hangs out at the mall anymore. So like if you went into like Nordstrom's or Saks or one of these high-end department stores, like you went in there for a reason. And because you went into a high-end retail store, look, they're going to ask you, hey, how can I help you? And what do we say? We say, oh, I'm just looking. Oh gosh, no, I'm just looking, because we're so conditioned to negative. You think of the first word you learned as a baby is very likely no. So we're conditioned to say no, and yet you came in there for a reason. And when you go into that nice department store, and some of you have probably experienced this, and you said, nah, I'm just looking. And a great salesperson will say, totally, look as much as you want. By the way, though, are you looking for something casual or something formal? And because you're human and you're not going to just run away, you're probably going to say, something casual. I got a birthday party this weekend. I'll just go look. And they might say, hey, we just got a new shipment in, and about half of it is actually on sale. Would you like me to show you where that is? And that's when you're like, oh, yeah. So what we do as agents, and it's just so not helpful, right? We have this habit of taking the first no. And whether it's because we're like, they don't want us and we want to move on, or it's a sensitivity thing and we feel rejected. Either way, we have this habit of taking the first no. And very few no's, like if you look at the screen, you see the absolute no to the absolute yes. So few of the no's you get are absolute. So few of them. So we've got to learn to keep pushing. We've got to learn to keep going after it. I would, if you were ever going to practice, I know I'm going to say a word that might be 4 letters to some of you, script. Ooh, ooh. If you're going to practice scripts, I think some of the most effective things that you could learn are multiple closes, so that you could be in a great conversation with somebody and you want to meet with them or get them to sign the contract or whatever it is, and you get that first no, to where you don't need to necessarily get off the phone before you can go back to them and ask again. You've got to get in the habit of being able to close more than one way and to ask questions and find out more. And that's how real estate agents make a ton of money. They don't accept the first no. And there's a difference between being pushy and persistent. I'm not saying be pushy or creepy. I am saying that if we ask enough questions and keep going for the close, eventually, with most circumstances, we will get what we desire out of people. Also, that works great with like spouses and kids too. Like, just don't keep going until you get the answer that you want, right? And if you struggle with the word no, I would totally tell you to go on Amazon right now. It's a quick read. It's not expensive. If you've never read the book Go for No, like go and then for, not the letter FOR, not the number I mean, Go for No. It's a super simple read. It will change the way that you look at the word no, and it will drastically help you and your success level, and quite frankly, your stress level. So we've got to stop getting hurt every time we hear no. All right. So that's it. Now, I know that you may have wanted something like, I don't know, more difficult, because like if you followed those 5 steps and if you took lead gen and lead follow-up super seriously, you would call me in a year from now and tell me that your business blew up. And I would welcome you to do so, by the way. I'll close out and then we'll get any questions just with this quote. Some of you have probably heard it. There's been a lot of talk within our company about buffalo the last year, and yet buffalo wait for the storm to cross right over the crest of the peak of the mountaintop. And as the storm rolls over the ridge, the buffalo turn and charge directly into the storm. Instead of running east away from the storm, they run directly at the storm. Y'all, we're in a storm. I mean, you guys are kind of literally, it's real cold where you are. I just want to send you warm things. And yet, like, we're in a storm. This market is a storm, and there's droves of agents who are waiting it out, and they're going to go out of business and they're going to go broke while they're waiting. Let's just go get it. You're going to work harder than you've ever worked before the next year, couple years, who knows? I don't have a crystal ball. And yet, if you do that, when we inevitably ebb back into a less intense market, you're going to make so much money, you don't even know what to do with it. And you can send the extra to me because I got a lot of kids to put through college. So like, I'll welcome that extra money. But I'm telling you, if we just stopped worrying about the problems we have no control over and got into massive action, we'd make so much money, we'd change the world. All right. So I'm going to go. This last slide is just my contact information. I welcome if you have any questions or anything. Real briefly, I do want to talk about Bold. I know, just because I've met some of you, I know that some of you are already signed up for Bold. Here's the way that I see things. If you are not signed up for Bold, and you are not 100% sure that you have a foolproof plan to hit, meet, exceed, whatever, all of your goals in 2024, then at the very least, you owe it to yourself to be in the room for the free first step of Bold. Period. Like, there's nothing better you could do a week from today than put yourself in that room. I'm going to give you 2 opportunities to make money while you're there. I promise I will teach you something that you have never learned before, if not multiple things. You're going to get a free lunch. And then you also get to make an educated decision on whether or not you should take the entire class. And I'll tell you right now, if your reason for not signing up so far is financial, get yourself to First Step to Bold, because I will find a way. That's my promise to you. Are any of you, and so here's what I'd like to do, because I'm all about an easy button, because y'all got a lot of things to do. If you are not signed up for Bold and you would like to come to the free first step of Bold, where there's no obligation and I'm not going to get in your face and be pushy, it's whatever, if that's what you think, that's not what's going to happen. I'm going to ask for you to please type in your name. Well, y'all have your name, so don't type that. Type in your phone number and your email address. That's all I need to get you registered for the first step of Bold. All right. So while I allow people to do that, here's what I'd like to ask. If there's any questions that you have, or I don't know if Monica, if you want to say anything around Bold as well, or anybody on here. And yeah, if there's any questions, whether about this or about Bold, because there might be somebody on here who's like, what are you even talking about? Now's your time. There's no bad questions, just the ones you don't ask.
You know, I don't really have much to say that they haven't heard me say already, which is I don't know why you wouldn't at least show up to the free first step, get some amazing training on mindset and motivation, and have a good lunch and good company. And, you know, that really and truly, I think Bold is life-changing. So,
Well, and I want to make sure that you all know that while there is a lot of mindset, like Bold is about mindset and action. Those are the two things that make us successful. That's what it's about. On the action piece, there's one thing we teach, and it's towards the end of our day. There's one thing that we teach that I have not, since we added this to the material, I have never had a step 1 of Bold where I haven't had somebody tell me either at step 2 or send me a text or an email that they didn't get immediate business out of the thing that we taught them towards the end of the day. And by the way, if you don't like making phone calls, it's around text marketing rather than just picking up the phone, which you still have to do. I'm just saying. And yet it's around text. So like I can basically guarantee you I'm gonna make you some money. All right. So awesome. I see somebody's already registered. Rhonda, I did get your information. So if you see me randomly taking a screenshot, that's because I don't want to forget to get you registered. Any other questions or anyone else who would like me to get them registered for Bold? Okay, so here's my challenge to you before I let you go. If you're still here, I'm going to assume you got some sort of value. Otherwise, you would have just logged off Zoom. That's the beauty of Zoom. It's way less awkward than standing up in the middle of a class, right? So I'm going to ask you, and I'm just going to assume that other than Rhonda, you guys are probably all registered, and I recognize some names, so I think I might be right. My challenge to you is please help your leadership who's been busting their tail and reach out to 1 or 2 people today. Tell them that you hear. Tell them, by the way, I'm going to post the recording of this in your Market Center Facebook groups. Tell them they can come catch the recording and invite them to come and be your guest at First Step Bold. Tell them you'll sit with them. Some people are uncomfortable going to big events like this, right? Like, I'm going to ask you to grassroots this thing. And please, if you got value today, the only thing I ask in return for a free class is go make 1 or 2 phone calls to somebody who probably needs to hear from you. And by the way, they don't need to be with Keller Williams. All right. They do not need to be with Keller Williams at all. This is open to all brokerages. So I'm going to let y'all go. You have my contact information. Please reach out if you have any questions. Have the most beautiful day, and I will meet you in a week. Don't freeze, please. Stay warm. Bye, guys.
Hi, thanks.
hey, Warren, are you hanging on for a second?
I can. Here, let me hit the, hold on. Let me stop my share and let me stop the recording.